Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am here to talk about the top 15 books that I want to read next year. So what's really exciting is that we are getting into the portion of the year when we start doing all of the end of the year, beginning of the year videos, which are personally some of my favorites to watch. And one of my favorite videos that I did last year was I did a top 16 books to read in 2016. This has been fun to say, and it's, it rolls off the tongue better, but I decided I needed to stop this trend right now, because in a couple of years it's going to be top 20 to read in 2020, and that starts getting to be a scary number. So I've decided on a nice even 15, my top 15 books that I absolutely have to get to in 2017. Now I just wanted to say I am starting to plan my goals video, my goals for my reading and my channel in 2017, and I wanted to ask you guys a quick question first. Could you please in the comments below let me know what type of videos you want to see more of from me, just the kind of content in general, so I can get an idea and I can incorporate that into my goals. It would be really helpful if you would let me know what I'm doing that you guys like, what maybe I should leave behind. Leave that in the comments below so that I can incorporate it into my goals video. But now I want to talk about my top 15 books that I want to read next year. These are books that basically are must-get-tos. But these books are on my list for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they are on the list because they are books that I really want to read, but I don't know that I would read without a push, and I need that motivational push to get to them. Some of them are books that I've been putting off for way too long, and some of them are books that I am just really excited to read, and so they should be on my list. I've talked too much. Let's get into the top 15 books that I want to read next year. Jumping right in with number 15 on the list, I've got Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is a very, very big book here on BookTube. Basically, what I know about it is that it takes place in the Grisha universe, but you don't necessarily have to read the original Grisha trilogy before you get to this one. It features a cast of 6 characters. There is a fantasy setting, and it is about some sort of con or heist. I don't talk about this very often, but heist and con movies are my favorite movies, and I will watch them and love them no matter how terrible they are, so I don't really know why I haven't read that many books. Plus, this is all of it set in a fantasy setting, and there are multiple characters in the leading cast that are not white, able-bodied, straight. It is an incredibly diverse collection of those 6 main characters. Basically, this book is everything I want, and it's time for me to get on it, and maybe, possibly, also get to the second book, Crooked Kingdom. We'll see. Next, sticking with the incredibly popular BookTube books, number 14 is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Now, there are a lot of differing opinions on this series. I've heard somewhat okay things about the first one, but I have heard incredible things about the second one. And so I have decided that I would like to give the series a try. This first one is supposed to have Beauty and the Beast type elements. It's supposed to be about fae in some way, and that's basically what I know, except, okay, that's not even true. I know a lot about the second book, to be honest with you. I'm kind of more excited to get to that one, but I really enjoy fairy tale retellings, and I'm excited to try this one out sometime in 2017. The number 13 book I want to mention is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. It's actually the Shades of Magic trilogy. I loved A Darker Shade of Magic this year when I read it, and then somehow I never got to the second one, mostly because it's bigger than the first one and I think it intimidated me. Basically, A Darker Shade of Magic is about a world in which there are multiple different Londons. Each of them looks different, each of them has a different type of magic, and there's this one main character, Kel, and he has the ability to go to different Londons. It is an adventure, it is beyond fun. I absolutely loved it, and the final book, A Conjuring of Light, comes out in 2017, so I really have to get to the second one so I can finish off the series as well. At number 12, we've got Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is one of the very first books that I ever added to my TBR when I first started watching BookTube. I think I originally heard it from Peruse Project's channel, but of course it is been heard now from many, many channels. It is some sort of apocalyptic novel, but it follows a theater troupe, I believe. I've heard that this is a much softer take on an apocalyptic novel, and I recommended it incredibly highly to everyone I knew, even though I hadn't read it yet. So my grandmother read it, and my mother read it, and now they're furious with me because I recommended a book that I'd never read, and they've read it, and they can't talk about it. I can see how that would be annoying. It's time for me to finally get to this one. It comes so highly praised, and I'm beyond excited. Number 11 is one that has been on my TBR for a while now, which is why it's on this list, and that is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This is, I believe, a true crime story. I've seen the movie. It was really, really good. It has Philip Seymour Hoffman in it, just doing an incredible Truman Capote, like, my god. But I wanted to read more nonfiction. I have read only one other thing by Truman Capote a long time ago, and I really want to get to this one, plus it's a book Janelle owns, so that makes things easier as well. Coming in at number 10, speaking of nonfiction, I'd like to get to some other nonfiction, so one that I want to read is Where Am I Now by Mara Wilson. Mara Wilson was a huge part of my childhood, and I think she was a part of many people's childhoods. She played Matilda in the movie Matilda, but she was in many more things than that. She was in Miracle on 34th Street, she was in Mrs. Doubtfire, she was in this great movie that I loved. It wasn't great, but I loved it, called A Simple Wish. I adored Mara Wilson, and she stepped back from acting once she got a little bit older. She realized it wasn't what she wanted to do, and so this book is just about her being a child star, what that was like, what she's doing now. She's a guest voice sometimes on Welcome to Night Vale, this podcast. It's fantastic. If you haven't listened to it, I used to be obsessed. And I got to see her once when I went to a Night Vale show. So I absolutely love Mara Wilson, and I really, really want to read her memoir. Coming in at number 9, I've got a book that I really want to read, but I don't feel I would ever get to for some reason without a little bit of a push, and that is a book called Bittersweet. This book is by Miranda Beverly-Whittemore, I believe, and actually one of the reasons I chose this is because I have a second book by her, June, also on my TBR on Goodreads, and I really need to read something by this author before I determine whether or not I'm going to read other books. Bittersweet appears to be a thriller, potentially a literary thriller. I believe it's about a girl who goes to a friend's house, meets the family, and then sort of starts to discover some sinister secrets. I'm very curious about it, and I'm hoping I like it so that I can also read the author's other book that's on my TBR. Alright, you had to see it coming. We are getting into a section I call queer books that I really, really, really need to read in 2017, and the first of those is George by Alex Gino. This is a middle grade novel about a transgender girl, and it is, like, just highly acclaimed. People adore this book. First of all, it's middle grade about a trans girl, and I try to be supportive of all middle grade stories that have trans main characters. There's one coming out next year, 2017, called The Pants Project by Kat Clark. I have an ARC, haven't read it yet, but just so you know, future middle grade trans novel coming up. But yes, this is about a trans girl, and she really wants to play Charlotte, I believe, in the school's production of Charlotte's Web, but people are telling her she can't. I'm very, very excited to finally read this. It just comes so highly praised, and I don't know why it's taken me this long. I'm also planning on reading Look Both Ways by Alison Cherry. This is on my list because it was on my anticipated releases last year, bought it, and I still never read it. This is a book that features bisexual representation. It follows a girl. She gets an apprenticeship over the summer, really hits it off with her roommate, and then starts to fall for her roommate. I picked it up initially because, as I've said, I fell in love with my roommate, so I was really curious about it for those reasons. I've heard some mixed things about it now, but it was on my anticipated releases and I never got to it. Plus, bisexual representation, and I'm curious to see how that plays out, so gonna get to this one in 2017 as well. The next book that I want to mention is number 6 on the list, I believe, and that is Nevada by Imogen Binnie. This is an Own Voices novel. It is about a trans woman, and she has just simultaneously been dumped and fired, and so she's trying to just figure out where she stands in her life right now, and she goes on a road trip. That is about as much as I know about the plot. It is sort of supposed to be about self-discovery, figuring out where you fit, and I am so over the moon excited to read it. It has been on my list for a very, very long time now. I think I originally discovered it on Nicole's channel, which I'll link down below. It just sounds fantastic, and I cannot wait to read it. At number 5, I've got Girl Man's Up by Emmy Girard. This is a 2016 release, and it follows a butch lesbian protagonist. I cannot believe I didn't know about this book at the beginning of the year to put it on my anticipated 2016 releases list, because it would have been on there. There are not nearly enough butch girls in YA. Basically, this appears to just be a YA contemporary about this girl coming to terms with with her gender expression, with her sexuality. It sounds really fascinating. It sounds like it's going to be really nuanced, and I mean, can I just insist again that there be more butch girls in YA, because that's really all I want. That's all I need to know. Okay, so we're getting into the top 4 books that I want to read now, and coming in at number 4, I've got The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. Like last year, I went to my Goodreads list, organized them by how long books have been on my TBR, and I chose the one at the top. This book is the book that has been on my TBR shelf the longest, for like 4 years. I have not seen the movie. I believe it is about a girl who's been kidnapped. I think it's going to be sort of a dark story, and at this point, it's just been so many years that I've wanted to read this book, and I think I needed the motivation. I think I needed the push. So it's finally gonna happen. Finally gonna read The Lovely Bones. At number 3, I really want to finish off a series, so I want to read Eona by Alison Goodman. This is the sequel to a book called Eon, which I read this summer. Fantastic book. It's about a girl named Eon, and she wants to be trained to use dragon magic, but girls are not allowed into the training program, so she disguises herself as a boy, and all sorts of things happen from that. It is incredibly atmospheric. There is a trans side character, and dragons. It has everything to me, and I really, really loved the first one, so I'd love to wrap up the duology. Alright, number 2, we've got American Housewife Stories by Helen Ellis. This is another one that was on my anticipated releases of last year that I never got to. It is a collection of short stories about American housewives, I think through time, but the cover gives the vibe of like the 50s and the 60s, but they all have an incredibly dark twist to them, which is basically all I want. When I found out this book existed last year, I was like, where has this been? This is all I want. This is all I've ever wanted. So yeah, I definitely have to read this. It was on my anticipated releases, and I somehow never got to it, even though it is like 11 million kinds of up my alley. And finally, coming in at number 1, the number 1 book that I must get to in 2017 is Stiletto by Daniel O'Malley. This is not a well-known series on BookTube, and gosh, would I like to change that. So this is the second book in a series. The first book is called The Rook. It is about a woman named Miffany Thomas. I think I'm pronouncing that incorrectly because I think she's Welsh, and I know someone corrected me at some point. But she wakes up in the first book surrounded by dead bodies, and she has no memory of who she is. So she opens up this briefcase and reads a letter inside that is from herself. And the letter says that she can either take what's inside the briefcase and leave, she will be on the run for the rest of her life, and she will never have anything that has happened to her explained, or she can go back to work as usual and try to figure out who would want to erase her memory and why she's surrounded by all these dead bodies. Clearly, she decides to go back to work, and she figures out that she is actually a person who works for an agency invested in protecting the people of London from supernatural creatures. It is hysterical, fun, so different, and the sequel took forever to be released. Forever. I've been waiting for so long, but now it exists. It came out this year. I didn't get to it because I really need to reread The Rook before I get to this one. So that is my plan next year, is to reread The Rook, read Stiletto, and jump back into a series that I absolutely adored the first book in. Okay guys, there you go. That is my list of the top 15 books that I want to read in 2017. This is a list I'm going to stick to. I have stuck to my one from 2016. It has been a really, really great motivational tool, so I love making these lists. I hope that you have found a couple of books maybe you'll want to pick up in 2017. And if you haven't, what are some of the books that are books you have to get to next year? I didn't include any of my anticipated releases because that will be another video. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed watching. Again, please let me know what types of videos you want to see from me in the new year in the comments below. Anything about these books or other books that you want to read, you know, comments, like I said. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!